I want to talk about spells that, you know, not many people talk about, and I haven't seen that many people mention this spell in my life at all. I've only ever seen it once, used by Matt Mercer and the lovely Delilah Briarwood. If you need the details on this specific episode, I think it's 100 and something, maybe 100 exactly. I could probably find it pretty easily if you wanted a working example of this spell. Prismatic Wall is one of my favourite spells for a lot of different reasons that I'm going to be gushing about in today's video. Buckle in, because this is one of the biggest spells in 5th edition. It's a long one. Let's get into it. So Prismatic Wall is a 9th level spell. This is very hard to reach for player characters because on average a campaign's going to cut off at about, you know, levels 10 to 13 maybe. That's kind of the most average if I see campaigns managing to continue all the way to the story conclusion. So likelihood is players aren't going to be able to get their hands on this spell. That's certainly the only con to this spell, if I'm being honest. The fact that players aren't going to be able to experience the absolute joy that this spell gives me. Now, when I'm talking about this spell, consider that this is a once-a-day thing for a player, and most likely for a Dungeon Master too, unless the Dungeon Master's running a very high-powered Lich, in which case they will probably have more than one 9th level spell. So this wall takes an action to be put down and needs to be put within 60 feet of the caster. It's up to 90 feet long, 30 feet high, 1 inch thick. It can't be seen through. So anything that could be hiding behind this, you know, huge wall that suddenly just appears. There's a lot of components to this that I have to explain, like how it can't intersect a creature that's already there, or that it can be made into a 30 diameter feet sphere. Just kind of a bubble, like a bigger Lehman's tiny hut sort of thing. This wall is really bright, shedding 200 feet total of light, 100 bright, 100 dim. Makes sense, it's a 9th level spell. You can choose some friends that you can see that you like, not to get yeeted into oblivion if you're lucky. This is a bit more vague. Apparently if someone gets within 20 feet of the wall on its turn, or at the start of it maybe, they need to make a Constitution saving throw or they're blinded for a minute. I'm not really sure, because I think that the way that the ally thing works, where you designate them not to be harmed, I think it might be able to be ruled that allies aren't affected by this either, but that's entirely up to DM and player interpretation and what you guys agree on there. But that's a pretty good feature. In any case, the blind list doesn't get to be saved against again. You're blind for a minute now. Uh-oh. Really makes this thing feel like a 9th level spell. This thing is going to be sticking around for a while. Anti-magic field doesn't work on it. Spell magic does, but only kinda. Sometimes. I'll tell you about that in a sec. Let's get on to the meat of this amazing thing, shall we? The wall has 7, count 'em, 7 layers. Each of them a different colour, and they all do different things. If someone wants to just yeet into the wall, they can, but they're going to have to suffer the effects of hitting each layer of the wall as they go through. They could, like, you know, keep pushing. They could get to the first one and be like, brr, ow. And then just keep going, brr, ow, brr, ow. And just die, because that's what they do if they try to do that, unless they're like a rogue, probably. A rogue could maybe weasel their way through this. That's about it. Anyone who touches the wall needs to make a dexterity saving throw for a lot of different effects that you'll see when I begin to describe later on. Each layer has a different way to be destroyed, which I'll also talk about. They're all pretty unique. And also, like, if someone touches the first layer and they take that damage, the layer's still there, and they move on to the next one and take the next, etc., etc. Big spell. Now, the layers are in order. I assume that the order is reversed if you're standing on the other side of the wall to the one that kind of, like, casted. I'd say, like, if player 1 was here casting Prismatic Wall to player 2, layer 1 would be, like, here, layer 2 would be, like, here, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that sort of thing. That's how I interpret it anyway. The conditions to destroy each layer are very random, so I would advise perhaps letting players, I don't know, research or learn to kind of have the time to test the waters on Prismatic Wall before they have to face it in a much more dangerous situation, because they're so random that players just aren't going to think of most of them. Let's get on to each individual layer, shall we? Layer 1, red. 10d6 fire damage on a failed saving throw, or half as much on a success. Unless your ranged attacks are magical, say bye-bye to ranged attacks while this wall is up. Dealing a total of 25 cold damage to it, destroys the layer. I think this means with a single attack, but I'd allow it to accumulate as if it had hit points just to make the players' lives a little easier dealing with this titan of a spell. They're going to have to pour a lot of spell slots into this thing. Layer 2, orange. 10d6 of acid damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. And this one even says fuck you to ranged magical attacks. This wall really doesn't like ranged attacks. A simple strong wind from something like the Gust of Wind spell or bigger is going to get rid of this layer. Layer 3, yellow. You guessed it, 10d6 of lightning damage this time. Same conditions as before. Doesn't have any other effects that stop any sort of damage or any type of thing going through, but requires a total of 60 force damage to be destroyed. I assume due to it being around 60 that this spell really wants you to cast Disintegrate on it, due to it doing an average of 75 damage. But once again, I would just say it accumulates so that the Eldritch Blast Warlock can cut it down to, like, almost no health in a few hits. Layer 4, green. Now I wonder what colour green is associated with in terms of damage types. Oh, that's right, poison. 10d6 of it. No funky effect on this one either, but you need to create a passable doorway in this one to move through it. Similar to, like, so the Pass Wall spell would work on this, or some other creative moves with some magic items or class features that they have might work with this as well. I think this is very cool and allows players to get very creative with it. Layer 5, blue. 10d6 of... You thought I was going to say something different than cold damage for a second, didn't you? Nope. It's cold damage. And can be destroyed with 25 fire damage. Simple and cool, literally. I think that this one's cool because if they manage to take down the fire one and they're not sure about the cold one, they might just try the reverse, which works. This is where it starts getting really weird. This wall, instead of dealing damage, just starts petrifying you the same way that monsters do. On a failed save, you are restrained and have to make a series of Constitution saving throws in the same way that you'd make Death saving throws at the end of your turn. On 3 successes, you are not restrained anymore and you're out of there. However, on 3 failures, you are petrified. It's basically a first of 3 situation. First 2-3 even. Also, this is the most important layer because spells can't travel through it. Daylight or something more powerful than that yeets this layer into oblivion. Layer 7, violet. This one is the absolute final boss of this spell. It blinds you until the start of your next turn. Either way, the blindness is going, just for free, at the start of your turn. But you need to make a wisdom saving throw at the same time. If you fail, bye-bye, off to another plane you go. Succeeding's fine, though. This works similar to banishment, sending something either back to its home plane or to the astral or ethereal plane if it has nowhere else to go. This is the only layer that can be destroyed by Dispel Magic, and you don't need to roll it as if it was a 9th level spell. Cast Dispel Magic, boom, no matter what level. In case you couldn't tell, some of the conditions for getting rid of the wall are really strange. Keep that in mind when you're casting it. When I was referring to you just then in the text, I was referring to if someone was trying to run through the wall, basically. I think it's kind of like, right, you've hit the first layer, do you want to keep going? And we'll see what happens. I'd let players withdraw once they know how the heck this thing works, I suppose. If they say yes to barging in there, they're going to learn the hard way how rough this spell is. Give this to a really powerful Archmage bad guy if my DMs out there want to try something really funky. But certainly let the party have fun and experiment with it. I think this could serve as an interesting segment in a boss fight where a prismatic wall appears and they're in a room with clues that could help them destroy each layer. But they can't go within 20 feet of it, they shouldn't test it, so therefore they're going to just find out the right solution before they barge in there. Since it only lasts for 10 minutes, they could have the pressure of time on them. That's Prismatic Wall, the biggest spell. Not the biggest spell, but certainly one of the most powerful. Hopefully I've convinced you to use this, because it is an absolutely amazing spell. If you enjoyed today's video, spank that like button so much it starts calling you daddy, and make sure you also subscribe so that you never miss one of our awesome uploads. Puts on sunglasses. I regret that sentence very much. Keep the discussion going in the comments or in our Discord, which you can find in the description. In any case, thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye!